project here in its early design phase and of the program, and answer any questions you had at this date. Obviously, with the commitment to be back to the community at various points over the course of the balance of the project design and project implementation. So with that, I will turn it over to Claudia Filomena, who wears many hats with the authority, project manager for the Northwest project specifically. And with that, she'll introduce the project team and then turn it back over to Jeff for some quick introductory remarks. So go ahead, Claudia. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks everybody for hosting us tonight. As Nick said, my name is Claudia Filomena. I'm the Director of Capital Projects at the Battery Park City Authority and also the project manager for the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project. I'm also joined by our Senior Vice President for Real Property, Gwen Dawson, as well as our design team. We have from Arcadis, Joe Marone, and from BIG, we have Jeremy Siegel, as well as Bill Barton and Sherry Hyman from Turner Construction. And today, the goal of this meeting is we wanted to provide the Tenants Association with an overview of the project, specifically the areas adjacent to Gateway, Kowski Plaza, and the South Esplanade, and answer any questions you might have. We'd like to ask people to put their questions in the chat, and then we can answer them at the end of the presentation. We have sort of a brief presentation. We wanted to leave time for questions. And any other questions we can follow up with after that. So that was my brief intro. Before we hand it over to Joe Marone or Arcadis, Jeff, I wanted to pass it back over to you for some brief words.
Thank you. Thank you. I think most of you know me. I'm Jeff Galloway. I'm one of the members of the GPTA Executive Committee. The GPTA board felt that it was important that the tenants hear about the resiliency project plans as they affect specifically Gateway. These plans are part of a series of plans, a series of projects around Manhattan, around the lower portion of Manhattan, designed to protect against the increased risk of coastal storms over the next decades. And think of Sandy on steroids is what we're trying to protect against. And what all of these plans have in common is the need to either construct barriers or to raise elevations along the shoreline to prevent against flooding. And we thought it important that the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project team explain to all of us how they intend to go about doing this in the area near Gateway. And so we're pleased to have them here. I want to give a brief thanks to the rest of the GPTA board before we start. The rest of the executive committee is Rosalie Joseph, Robin Forrest, Carlene Weiss, and Vittoria Ferriello. And the remaining members of the board are Sarah Cassell, Audrey Comiskey, Larry Emmert, Pat Gray, Howard Grossman, Denise Harris-Ector, Steve Kessler, and Shannon McHugh. So we welcome you all, and we look forward to hearing what the BPCA project team has to say to us. So back to you, Claudia.
Great, and I'm going to pass it off one more time to Joe Marone from Arcadis. Joe, take it away.
Thanks, Claudia. Thanks, Jeff. All right, so let's jump right in. Let's go to the next slide.
Gotcha, Joe.
Thank you.
There we go.
All right. So just quickly, what we're going to walk through today, we're partway through our welcome and introductions. We're going to do a general project overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy, who's going to give you more detail on the areas of the project we call Reach 6 and Reach 5, the South Esplanade and the North Cove area. And then we'll certainly leave some time for some questions and answers. So let's go to the next one. We can keep going. Yep. So Claudia already pretty much covered this this slide. So this is the team that's working on the North and West Coastal Resilience Project. And so for the North and West project, So we're right now in the middle of the design, we're in the beginnings of the design process. We're working through what's called the 30% design. And if you think about design, when you're done, you're going to have 100%. So we're somewhere approaching about a third of the way through that process. We'll be continuing with the design through the summer and then into the spring, and then moving over into the construction phase. The timeline for construction is still being determined. So as Jeff said, to kind of reinforce the point that the Battery Park City projects are part of a bigger program for Lower Manhattan to improve the coastal resilience of the area. You can see that on the East Side Coastal Resilience Project is under construction. The Brooklyn Bridge in Montgomery, the BMCC project, is about to go to construction. And then further south, and so is the Battery Coastal Resilience. That's nearing construction at the very tip. And then the Seaport and Financial District is still in the planning phase, but also moving forward. So you can see this is the Battery Park City projects are really an integral part of providing coastal protection for Lower Manhattan. So the North and West project covers a good stretch of Battery Park City, all the way from South Cove, where we tie into the South Battery Park City project, working north along the Esplanade through the North Cove area and through Rockefeller Park, and then eventually tying back into the Tribeca area to high ground. What we're going to focus on today, well, we can jump to this. What we're going to focus on today is the areas we call Reach 6 and Reach 5. It's the Esplanade area and the North Cove area. So those are the areas I think of most interest to the folks on the call today, and that's what we'll focus on. What this slide, sorry. Thanks, Jeremy. So what I do want to just say is that it's good to have a quick reminder here of what we're thinking about and why we're doing this project, and that's to look at flood risk not only for today but also working into the future with sea level rise. And there's a pretty extensive area of Lower Manhattan that this project will benefit when it is constructed. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeremy and to go through more detail on this project specifics.
Great, thank you, Joe. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeremy Siegel with BIG. I'm a senior associate with our urban planning and design group. And so I'm going to take you through these two reaches. We've had the chance to discuss some of this with some residents of the Plaza, including Jeff. We've spent some time at tables together. So for some of you, this will be a refresher, and for others, it will be a bit of an introduction. And if you'll just allow me 10 seconds, I'm going to plug my computer in.
Make sure it doesn't die.
Right. So focusing in here on Reach 6, which is what we refer to as the South Esplanade. This runs from Esplanade Plaza at the northern boundary down to South Cove. This is the area of the Esplanade in front of Gateway Plaza, a bit more of a narrow condition, but one where you have a quite well-trafficked sort of historic promenade, an upper pathway, shade, and seating. So we have heard a number of things about this area as we've been going about our community engagement. Concerns over impact on the waterfront, including access and views, desire to maintain the waterfront esplanade and canopy as much as possible, crowding and mobility conflicts at intersections, as the amount of tourists and visitors increases and as micromobility and biking and scootering become more widespread, that's becoming more and more an issue. And that ties into concerns over use of bicycles. So you can see here the circulation patterns with major circulation along the waterfront, secondary circulation along the upper promenade, and then sort of small steps that are shown there in red between the upper and lower promenades. We've been looking at the dimensions of these things and just understanding how much space there is to move today and trying to really preserve, at least preserve the amount of space for movement that there is today, and wherever we can improve upon that. The existing green space and tree canopy is important to think about here. Both because we want to try to preserve as much of it as possible, but also recognizing that these trees sit on a relieving platform, which you'll see in just a few slides. And they are in varying levels of health. So we're assessing that and understanding where it makes sense to preserve things and where it might make sense to replant as part of this project. We also, of course, recognize that the existing green spaces serve as privacy buffers to the residential properties. We want to make sure that we're maintaining sufficient buffering in the future design. There's quite a bit of public art here, given that it's a state land. And these are sort of in a number of different states of consideration for preservation in place, replacement in kind, or otherwise, and we'll be working with the Battery Park City Authority on that. And then I mentioned the fact that this whole area sits on piers, essentially. So the whole area that you see here in the pink hatching, actually, if you go below that, it's water and a set of piers or piles, which makes it that we have a very narrow footprint to build our flood protection within, essentially between the edge of the relieving platform and the edge of the private properties. What you can also see here is that Gateway Plaza and its tower is the one exception here where the tower is actually projecting out and over the relieving platform. So a very peculiar structural condition there that the flood protection system needs to think about as it moves through that area. So we've been working on this since late summer, early fall of 2022. And back in the fall of 2022, we presented two approaches that we were looking at for this area. The first one on the left, you can see preserves the existing platform structure and constructs a flood protection element in between the edge of that pier structure and the private property that's adjacent. There is a limit of impact associated with the construction of that. And so in those areas, which you can see here highlighted in blue, we have the opportunity to reimagine and sort of enhance the park landscape. What you can see here on the right is an alternative that we looked at, wherein rather than placing the flood protection between the edge of the pier and the private property, we would actually shift the flood protection out a few feet, 5 to 10 feet, and then that would trigger the reconstruction of the entirety of the platform, which would be raised here. That would mean that the platform itself, as well as all of the tree canopy and everything topside, would be demolished and rebuilt. And based on community feedback regarding preservation of canopy, sustainability principles, where we're really trying to minimize demolition and reconstruction and really use what we have as much as possible, we selected the concept that you see on the left here to progress into the next stage. So you can see here in another view the existing parkscape with the planting buffer, upper pathway, and waterfront promenade a few feet lower, as well as the private terraces to the right. And you can see here the flood protection element, as well as its subsurface foundations going below ground, and the general zone of construction impact, wherein all the machinery and equipment that will be required to build the flood wall will be traveling, and therefore the landscape there will need to be rebuilt when the flood protection is complete. So you can see here what we've been looking at for that area. We've taken some lessons here from projects that we've been working on elsewhere in the city, where sort of taking the opportunity to introduce a bit of topography, to get some views out and over the railing and sort of have a stronger relationship to the water, to increase the density and biodiversity of planting. We're really taking advantage of all those opportunities. What I will note here is that from the flood wall, there is a 15-foot minimum offset wherein we cannot replant trees. And that's due to Army Corps guidelines, which are basically trying to ensure that toppled trees or their root systems don't undermine the flood protection during a storm with high wind. And that's tied to FEMA accreditation, which is a goal for this project. And Joe can speak more to some of those considerations if there are questions about them later. So with that as kind of the sectional principle in mind, what you can see here is the sort of current and developing draft of the design approach in plan, where you see essentially that we are trying to consolidate and really reinforce the waterfront esplanade as the one for visitors, for folks who are jogging or moving a bit faster. And then through introduction of a bit of meander to that secondary path, really reinforce its character as a slower path that is more for sort of quiet walks, contemplation, and slower speeds. You can see some of the trees here that will be impacted by the construction of the flood protection and the 15-foot offset. In dark green, you can see new trees that will be added. And then in the lighter green are existing trees, which are targeted to remain in place. What you can also see here are gates. These are sort of roller gates, like sliding gates that exist at the street ends. And around Gateway Plaza, where we'll focus in just a moment, you see the flood protection actually moving outboard because it cannot go through the bottom of the building. And as it does that, there are a series of swing gates and sort of deployable elements that will preserve access in this scheme. What you can also see here is this kind of black line that jogs out to the edge, reflects that in this area, because the flood protection is touching the relieving platform, this is an area where we need to rebuild the platform itself. So sort of the right-hand image several slides ago, where we were comparing leaving the existing platform in place versus rebuilding it and elevating it. In the Gateway Plaza area, because we are forced to push the flood protection out, this is an area where we do need to replace the platform entirely. And so you can see that reflected in the limit of work jogging out, as well as the trees in this area, all being newly replanted trees. So getting down to ground level a bit, this is kind of an existing view along the esplanade, and then sort of turning the head a little bit to the left. This is a perspective of what the reconstructed upper esplanade might look like, with the meandering forest walk, existing trees preserved as much as possible, enhanced understory planting, the flood barrier system sort of running along the alignment of the existing privacy wall in the back. And then the historic esplanade really preserved in place and widened wherever possible to ensure that flow is maintained. Here you can see at Rector Place, or in the area between Rector Place and Albany Street, the kind of existing upper pathway experience and what the proposed might look like, getting views out over the railing and to the water. In cross section now, getting to Gateway Plaza itself. So this is the restaurant space here. Its existing floor, finished floor elevation is 11.5 feet. Just outside of it, the existing grade of the secondary path is 10 feet, and then the lower path is 9.5 feet. And then you can see here the elevations of the intervention as proposed. So the flood protection element is sort of moving outboard here. It ties into a structural deck. And then there is a kind of cutoff wall that would run vertically, bringing it down below grade. The elevation here is brought up to +12 from the existing +10. That's intended as a resiliency measure. So wherever we rebuild new platform, we're trying to bring it up to a new resilient elevation. Fortunately, the interior of the restaurant here is already about at that level. So not so challenging in terms of tying it into the context. You can see a plan here with the flood wall running along the privacy wall just west of the pool area, following some of those existing walls on site and maintaining access with a sliding gate. You have another sliding gate here, so maintaining those two dining terraces sort of as they are today in configuration. And then you can see along this edge, to maintain views out from the restaurant to the water, we're indicating a sort of a set of deployable elements, which we are still working on the design of. You'll see what that might look like in a perspective view in a moment. This is a perspective view of the southern dining terrace looking south. You can see that the height of the existing privacy wall is +18 feet above sea level. And then you can see that our flood protection to meet the design height that will protect against a 100-year storm, accounting for sea level rise to the year 2050, is at 19.5 feet. So 1.5 feet taller than the existing privacy wall. And you can see that gap that's maintained by the use of deployables. And then views out from the restaurant here. Approximately 4 to 5 foot portions of solid wall are indicated here with stretches that would have deployable elements. We really want to look at how to design this so that it's aesthetically pleasing, providing a good level of safety and resiliency, but also not overly impacting views and experience from the restaurant. And that brings us now to Reach 5 in North Cove, which will kind of cover the northern edge of Gateway Plaza. And if there's questions on the western edge, which I'm sure there will be, we're very happy to cover them at the conclusion of the presentation. So here looking at Gateway Kowski Plaza, and Esplanade Plaza over here is going to be a bit of a hinge between the two. So one thing that we heard here loud and clear was that the kind of flexibility of that space where the volleyball court is today is something that residents in this area very much want to keep. It's sort of a place where gatherings and events occur that's a little more, of a local character versus the more kind of the larger scale and the more kind of a commercial character of the rest of North Cove. So we really sought to preserve that character here and sort of propose to complement that with a seating and planting element that sort of helps to frame that plaza, provides informal seating for community events, and increases the amount of softscape that we have in this area, which is great for thermal comfort, sustainability, habitat, and other goals of the project. Here, kind of turning around the corner up at Kowski Plaza, this is the existing situation. You can see the privacy wall and fence beyond the tree line there. So the proposal here is to run the flood wall generally along that same alignment. You can see that the height we need to get to for the flood protection here is 16.5 feet above sea level. The reason that's 3 feet less than it is on the other side is that there's less wave action here. This area is protected from waves to a higher degree. And so we're able to reduce flood wall heights in those areas. But because the existing privacy wall and fence are at roughly 20.5 feet above sea level, we propose to just keep the wall height at that higher height in order to maintain the same amount of privacy. So that's sort of where we are with the areas surrounding Gateway Plaza at the moment. I know it was a lot of information thrown at you just now, but Joe and I are here together with the authority to answer any questions.
Which is great because we have a bunch in the chat. I think I'll just read these out loud. People can read along. We can also save the chat for later and circulate that as well. So the first being, in my opinion, the most catastrophic outcome would be building this wall, but it being too low to protect against storms of the future. Can you please speak to the data used to determine the height of the wall and why you believe the plan will be sufficient for the storms in the 2060s?
Turn that over to Joe.
Yeah, I can take that one. So the data we're using for sea level rise is the New York City climate change panel on climate change data projections, which include 90th percentile confidence level of 2.5 feet of sea level rise for the 2050s. That's a number that's been consistently used throughout the city for projects with this kind of for resiliency projects, and it's been widely adopted.
Sorry for that, talking mute. The second question is, what do you as experts think of the 2-foot subsidence expected by year 3023 in the paper cited by the broadsheets Earth's Future by the American Geophysical Union? We may not be able to answer this question at this forum, but I will, defer to Joe, but we can also sort of put a response in writing to this particular question.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea because it's an interesting article, and I've looked at it a little bit. I haven't read it as in depth as I need to, but there are some very specific assumptions, and you have to really look at it it's very specific to where you are within the city, and that's one of the things, and what the geographic conditions are in different locations in the city. And so I think you want to, the headline says the 2 feet of that, but that's not going to be everywhere. And it's something that, it is, it can be a consideration in some areas, but I think that in other areas, it's a little bit probably exaggerated. No, not exaggerated. It's correct in some areas, or predicted in some areas, but not everywhere.
Okay, the next one is comment, but the comment was, please make sure Esplanade Plaza remains the same. This is our town square in South Battery Park, since we have no grass areas for recreation. The next question was, will the mature trees that are closer inland be preserved or removed? I believe this is referring to the trees that are on the upper path.
Tammy, it depends where we're talking. I can actually, I can pull up the plan once more. So you can see that here. So basically, if we're talking about the area from South Cove up to Albany Street, what we're really trying to do is preserve as many mature trees as possible. Those tend to be the mature trees along the western edge. There are some trees, and you can see them here in red, these larger trees, which will be removed due to the flood protection itself and the 15-foot offset that we were talking about, but replanted 15 feet beyond. And so, you know, I would say for the areas more inland in this area, it's something that we're sharpening the pencil on as we progress the design. In the Gateway Plaza area itself, due to the fact that we will be reconstructing the platform in its entirety, any trees, including those that are further inland, would be removed and replaced at that higher elevation as part of the new platform. I think Tammy, I see you put your hand up. Did you have a follow-up question?
So that means that you're
If everybody's not
that means
talking
that
for
you would
themselves,
be removing every tree that is within 15 feet of the wall, which includes all of the mature trees that are currently against all of the residential buildings, because the wall that you're looking to put is within 5 feet of the residential building, correct? So that pretty much is every mature tree on the inland side. If I look at the diagrams well.
Yeah,
and does
here,
that mean that you will not be able to replace them? So when you're looking, for example, in the planted areas that are over by Rector Park, you're removing all the trees that are around there. Will you not be able to replant trees? And if not, what kind of greenery are you looking to put?
that is actually a good segue, Tammy, because the next question was, how do we define trees? And does this include shrubs?
I think that the public, to truly understand this, needs to see the real world views of what this really looks like and perspective, so the public in real time can understand what they're looking at. You put those up for just the restaurant, but having an understanding of what that'll look like all around the neighborhood is how people can understand.
Okay.
No, and that's a really good point, and we've heard that a lot. I think when we've been out at public meetings, just being able to visualize sort of the whole experience as you're walking, not just in segments. So we are working on those visualizations because it is hard to sort of put all the pieces together and see the same perspectives as you're walking or cycling or using a motorized, mode of transportation down the Esplanade and in other areas within the project. So that's something that we're also looking on developing, in the coming weeks.
I can answer the next question that was posed, how trees are defined.
Yeah, that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, so that is woody vegetation. So that basically means that our palette within 15 feet of the wall are grasses and perennials.
The next question is, given the expected sea level rise, how long will this suffice? Won't we have to be revisiting this in 20 years?
So our as I mentioned, the design criteria includes 2.5 feet of sea level rise. So that's and then we have a design storm, which is the equivalent of it's the FEMA current 100-year storm. So that's what we're looking at. So as we said, it's a 90th percentile likely that sea level rise won't be exceeded in the 2050s. So the design criteria are intended to have the wall function well into the future. I will also say one of the things we're currently looking at is what we call adaptability. So what can you do in the future to increase, increase the longevity of the wall without having to come in and completely reconstruct it.
Okay, the next question, the walls going around the Jewish Heritage Museum were presented to be a partial solid wall with a lower half, on the lower half in glass. Why can't that treatment be used instead of the 5-foot wall?
And that's one of the things we're evaluating right now. And I think if we look at that graphic where we're showing the openings, that very well could be the glass similar to what was done at the Jewish Heritage Museum.
Next question, also on landscape. With the rebuilding, it seems that all the mature hydrangeas will be dug up. Will they be replanted?
A detailed planting plan will be developed as we progress the design. And I think if there is community input for particular kinds of planting, we're very welcome to take that, whether that's through sort of ongoing feedback to the authority or through our workshops, which will be which we'll continue to have.
The next question is related to construction. Will you be closing sections of the entire pathway during demo and reconstruction? How will this impact local traffic around a near gateway? I can take a first pass at this. We're currently looking at construction phasing, areas of impact, and how we, sort of create the minimal amount of impact for users of the space. Obviously, it's incredibly complex and we're at a very early stage, but those are discussions we're starting to have to make sure that we're also creating alternative navigable paths for people if areas are closed during construction. Specifically here with the platform reconstruction, we're going to need to work, I think, extra hard to make sure that it's sort of easy for people to navigate the space while construction is ongoing. So that'll be something in future conversations with this group. Obviously, we'll want to bring to the table and get feedback on for sure. The next question is, it's important to preserve the character of the neighborhood. This includes preservation of the ability to know your waterside on the Hudson River. How can deployables and glass top flood walls versus full walls that block and seal the public off from the water be incorporated? I think we've addressed this in different forms. I mean, I think in areas, where we have views, I know that there's a question also about first floor apartment views, ground floor apartment views, and how those views will be impacted. I think we're looking at solutions, as Jeremy mentioned and Joe mentioned as well, of where we can use deployable measures or where we can use glass top, where there's other technology that's available, so that it can also help mitigate some of those visual impacts. I don't want to speak for the designers or engineers, certainly, but I know that that's something we talk about a lot in our discussions about how we mitigate these visual impacts.
I will say in this area for, 90, I don't know if it's 90, but a large percentage of what we're proposing here is replacing privacy wall, which, has that, it is solid for that. That's the purpose of the privacy wall, I think. So that's in this area, that's kind of what we're looking to continue.
The next one is a comment to please keep the serious dog run as is. Right now, I don't believe we have any sort of plans to impact it in any way. So that was an easy comment to address. Have you considered noise, traffic, et cetera, during the construction of these elements? As I mentioned, we are talking about construction staging, and we obviously have to take that into consideration. We're doing work very close to residential buildings, very close to recreational spaces. So all of those things are going to need to be considered, and the cumulative impacts of all of those things as we move forward. Obviously, something that's also going to be analyzed as part of our EIS process. The next question is, will the promenade be completely closed during the construction? Again, we're looking at construction phasing. it's challenging with a project of the size, but we're trying to figure out ways to keep certain areas open or phased reopening of certain areas as they become complete. So more information to come. This is Tammy's question from earlier. Where's the real world views and perspectives to show the public what these plans will look like in real time? As I mentioned, we are in the process of developing those so people get a sense of, if you're walking through the space, sort of what it looks like, not just sort of rendered perspective views. If some of you recall, we did this for our South project. We had done fly-throughs for that. So we're looking to do something similar here so people really get the sense of how it transitions from one part of the project to the other. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jeremy or Joe, but I know that we want to make sure that we're providing the most accurate representation of what it's really going to look like for people experiencing the site.
No, I think you hit it well. The further design progresses, the more we're able to do that.
So this was a question about the ground floor apartment closest to the river, just south of the pool. Will the view be impacted by the 19.5 foot wall? I think we just need to maybe have more clarity on the location of that apartment in particular. As Joe said, we're using an existing privacy wall and it's just going to be built slightly higher, but I think we'd want to get more information about the exact location before providing a full answer, I would think.
Claudia, there was a couple of questions on the Esplanade, which it looks like there was some good discussion going on in the chat on that one. Did you?
Oh yeah, I was on my way there. I just want to make sure that we, the next question was just about construction to start. So we just anticipate construction to start. If you could flip back to that time, the timeline slide, which I think is the second or third slide.
Oh, I passed it.
Almost there.
Here we are.
There we go. So we expect construction to start in 2025. I think we addressed the question about the dog run, the plans for North Cove Marina. Jeremy, I don't know if you, or Joe, I don't know if you want to speak about those. We don't have any visuals of that, but maybe you could talk sort of in broad brushstrokes about what we're looking to do there.
Yeah, on the North Cove. So yes, we're staying out of the cove itself and continuing kind of the similar. Actually, you can see it right there, Jeremy, a little bit. Basically staying inboard or east of the existing esplanade throughout that area.
And we also have information on our website from our workshops that we did. I can put the link in the chat that shows some of the what we're thinking about for the North Cove area. I can drop that in the chat so you can take a look at that. I think we addressed this, but what is going to be located within the 15-foot offset will be flat land only. I think you might have addressed this, Jeremy, that there would be some level of.
Yeah, topography is okay. We're able to mound earth up against the flood wall, and we're able to plant that earth with, as I said, grasses and non-woody vegetation. And so, that is one sort of tool in our toolkit to sort of buffer the wall. At the same time, we're balancing that against the fact that the wall acts as a privacy wall. So there's sort of a minimum height above grade that it should be to discourage climbing. But it doesn't necessarily need to be flat.
The next question is, the wall will be 5 feet from the windows. I'm guessing that's the distance between, the question is, will the privacy wall, I don't want to rephrase someone's question, but I'm guessing this is asking if the location of the privacy wall from the windows of the building.
Joe, maybe you can frame in on the intent with the alignment as relates to the existing privacy wall.
Yeah, so in this area, what we're looking to do is basically maintain the privacy wall. So not maintain the privacy wall, but use the alignment of the privacy walls and replace that with the flood wall. So it'll, whatever the offset is today is what we would expect the offset to be after this project is done.
And next, it's what Joe is referencing about the conversation about the Esplanade. The question is, the Esplanade is crowded place, especially in summer months. Why create a meandering walkway? Why not keep the Esplanade as open as much as possible like it is today? And then there's sort of two sub comments, but maybe we'll address that first. And then I'll just read those other two comments aloud after we address that point.
Sure. I think one of the other goals of this project is to increase pervious surfaces, increase green space, provide as much canopy as possible. And so where we can, we're really trying to maximize green space. We don't want to do that to the detriment of space we have for movement. So as we continue to progress the design, we'll be looking closely at that. But we do see an opportunity there to create a space that maybe is a bit more green, a bit more as shaded as it can be, and that maybe through the meandering encourages slower movement. That's the intent.
And somebody had commented that the intention is to separate the fast moving people, joggers, bikers, etc., on the outside, and have the slow moving people, walkers, on the inside. This would avoid people weaving around each other and avoid collisions. And then the follow-up was the public does not use the existing two Esplanade walkways the way you imagine the future today. I think it'd be interesting in terms of getting feedback about how, given Gateway's location, how residents observe people using both pathways. I think user data is always helpful in informing the way that we design a space. So any incidental information, observations that people have, I think is incredibly helpful. Because at different times of day, you see different things also. So I think that would be helpful to our team for sure.
Absolutely. That's why we undertake these engagement processes and link them to our design process. And we're very open to that sort of feedback if there are concerns about what's being shown in the design. So we'll be very happy to take those comments now and also as we do in-person workshops.
Claudia,
Jeff,
could you
go ahead, Jeff.
Could you perhaps tell people how they can mechanically make comments and submit comments? Is there a portal on your website where you send?
Absolutely, yes. I was actually that was gonna be my closing, but we also have a dedicated email for the project that is monitored. It's not a black hole inbox. I will put the email address in the chat. You can send any comments, questions. They go to the project team and to myself, and we can answer them. And we welcome, again, if somebody has, sort of a document of comments, feel free to send them through that email address. I will add that to the chat right now. And we can also circulate it after the meeting as well. And Jeff C has his hand raised. This was his comment. I don't know if he wanted to provide any clarification on his comment, but I was
I did. I was just going to suggest just go out to the Esplanade on a Saturday or Sunday. It's crowded. I don't think you have to need much of a poll.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for the design team. I know they have been out several times, but I think that the summer months are obviously different users than, any other time of year for sure. So I'm sure that they will be out during this time of year, especially to get a gauge as to how people are using the space. Again, don't want to speak for Jeremy and his team, but I'm just assuming that that's probably what they're going to be planning on doing.
Yep.
Okay. Somebody had asked about the construction zones and other areas of the resiliency project are illuminated with construction lamps all hours of the night for security. How will you protect all residents facing the work zone from light and environmental pollution? As I said, we are working through construction logistics and are mindful of the need to both have lighting for security purposes, but also the fact that we'll be working adjacent to residential buildings. So we don't have, we're very early in the process and we don't have that plan in place, but once it's in development, that's again, more, feedback or information we bring out to the community and we'll want feedback on. Somebody asked when construction starts, that's 2025. The graphs show circles that I thought were trees, but given the definition of trees this evening, my question is where are actual trees as we know them placed?
I think that's a confusion between the woody growth description within the 15-foot buffer
And then trees.
and the tree diagrams. Are those circles really trees or are they bushes? I think those circles are really trees.
Yeah, we're not representing understory woody vegetation. We're only representing here trees in the circles.
The next question was, what is going to be located within the 15-foot offset? Will it be flatland? We addressed that question earlier. Will this presentation or slides be available for rewatch and download? Yes, we will make them available on our website. We will also circulate the presentation and the recording. The next question is, why is this project being pushed along so much faster than the other BPCA project, despite it being twice the size and affecting more residents? I think that we are taking a different approach to delivery of this project. Gwen, I don't know if you want to jump in, but we had been working on the northern portion of this project for a significant amount of time prior. The western part of this project is obviously was not as far developed at the time, but there was significant work done in the north portion. Gwen, I don't know if you want to sort of weigh in on timeline and sort of the method by which we're delivering the project.
Sure. We started the North project. I'm sorry, I'm not on camera, but we started the North project about 4 years ago as a standalone project. So did quite a bit of work there during that time period before deciding to combine the North and the West projects into a single progressive design build project, because we were given the authority to do that back in 2020. And part and parcel of our objective is to be able to get the protection in place as soon as possible, given the dire need for it. We are all hopeful that we don't have another Sandy or worse within the time period before we get these projects in place, but we are mindful of the urgency associated with getting this projects in place and working with our team, with our design build team, to do it in as expeditious a way as possible, which will also presumably lead to a cost efficiency that goes along with the ability to get the project done more quickly. That said, as has been pointed out earlier, we want to make sure that it's done as sensitively as we can. And that's something that we are keeping very top of mind.
I would just note there was also sort of a sub comment to this comment, and we have been doing engagement on this project for quite some time. Now we're doing a more granular approach to our outreach to make sure that we have a lot of stakeholders in this project. So we've done sort of larger meetings, we've done workshops, You know, and now we're doing sort of one-on-one engagement like this because every stakeholder has different interests, different concerns, project has different impacts. So we want to make sure that we're doing that more detailed sort of granular level of research. Speaking of, the next question is, can you share timelines for public input into the project? We have, obviously, you can provide input after this meeting, but also we have a public meeting that we're scheduling right now for the end of June, which will be an opportunity to see more detail on the project as a whole, and also provide feedback, which will help the design team as they further develop the design into the fall. And as soon as we, you know, have information about date, time, location, we'll circulate that. Please share it widely. We want as many people as possible to join those meetings. We also are looking at also providing a virtual option for people who can't be there in person. We also know people aren't comfortable being there in person sometimes, so we want to make it as flexible as possible for people. And we'll continue to do that. And we always welcome sort of any other opportunities for additional outreach on the projects, additional stakeholders, things like that. We're always looking for more people to talk to about it, because the goal is to have as many people as possible know about the project as it's being developed. The next question is, too often walls are covered by undesirable graffiti. Who's responsible for maintaining the walls against graffiti in the future? In terms of O&M, or operations and maintenance of the entire flood protection system, the authority is responsible for that. So we're responsible for graffiti removal. Sorry, that was complicated to say. Similar to our ball fields project, we had graffiti on the wall. We went and removed it and took care of it. That would be the same case here. That's the same case for the battery flood wall for our south project. We're responsible for graffiti removal and everything for that project as well. This is I think in reference to the question of the person who has the first floor unit. Please clarify if the resident can just see over the privacy walls now. Will they potentially lose all of their light view from their residence? What is the process for approval or rejection for the homeowner? I think in this particular case, as I said, it would be great to have more detail on that particular residence location so we can understand the impacts. I think in terms of conversations with individual owners, we're working on sort of what the engagement for that process looks like right now, because obviously there's a lot more impacts in buildings than just Gateway, especially as you move further down by South Coast Plaza and Riverwatch and things like that. So we are working on developing that, also for commercial businesses as well, how we have those conversations with them about sort of impacts and how we address them. Have you or anyone from your design team firm actually used the Esplanade in the summer months? I think it would be good for you to see exactly how much foot and bicycle traffic there is. I can say that I have, even before working for the authority. I used to run the Esplanade all year round, and I'm well aware of how crowded it does get during the summer months, especially now. I think post-COVID with tourism increasing, especially, we see a lot more people out there on a regular basis. And I think, as we said before, you know, spending more time out there in the summer and really seeing the number of users, especially this summer, I think is going to be really important, different than last summer, even the summer before.
Yeah, that's right. We've been working on this since the fall. Every month that we work on it, we're spending more and more time on site, but really speaking with residents who have been using it for years and years is really important input for us. So, you know, I think with the design, we also, as I said, we're kind of looking at optimizing other considerations, and if there are feelings that there are competing considerations that we should optimize instead, we're very happy to look at that.
A lot of people commenting, the Esplanade's very crowded during the summer. A lot of tourists looking at the Statue of Liberty and taking photos. And obviously the movement of people, I think we've sort of covered this. How will the public see responses to the questions that have been submitted? What is the mechanism for replies from the design and engineering team? We have been working on putting together a frequently asked questions that includes questions that we've gotten, was going to say frequently asked questions, but that's pretty self-explanatory. But questions we've gotten through the public inbox and that have been answered by the design team. I think, and what we've done is we've also categorized those by reach. So we're going to continue to build on that. It's a living document. Every time we get new questions, we update that. So in addition to that, in addition to obviously sharing or posting comments we get from public meetings and other engagements, we're working on sort of developing a more, I think, a quicker sort of response time and turnaround so that we make sure that we're getting information out to people as quickly as possible. The next two questions are actually about the upper room. I wanted to clarify this point. So former presentations included concerns about the removal of the upper room. Presenter said this plan was chosen. How is the feedback on preservation being responded to? And then can the upper room be kept? We are looking at the public art for this project on a case-by-case basis. We're also consulting with the artists. Their decision about the future of the upper room has not been made. We're still, having and engaging the original artists on that project. So, we're working on a broader public art strategy, taking the public's feedback into consideration, obviously taking our engineering needs into consideration as well. And similar to what we did on the South project, where we want to relocate existing artworks until construction is complete. If we can relocate them on site, that's great. And obviously determining sort of what we do with each individual piece, because as you are all aware, I'm sure a lot of these are like the upper room, they're very big pieces, they're specific to the area. So we are working on that strategy as well. Would like to know about how you'll be addressing the concerns of tenants and homeowners in ground floor apartments. It's not only going to impact views, but many people work from home and this sounds like a very long, noisy, intrusive project. As we said, I think we're working on how we address first floor impacts. You're completely correct. It will be an intrusive project and it will be loud for sure. It is, sort of heavy construction. So I think we're trying to work on clearly identifying what those impacts will be, what the duration of them will be, so that when we have conversations with building, again, condo boards, tenant associations like yourself, we can actually answer those questions when we have more clarity on what those actual answers are. Please keep the upper room. Are the FAQs currently posted or is that a work in progress? If not yet live, we actually have the latest version on our website. I will put the link in the chat. But they were just most recently updated this month. And then we will continue to update them. Usually we try to do it on a monthly basis as we get questions in. So I just put that in the chat. Disagree about walkers being near the river and runners on the upper levels. Wherever the greater canopy is, that needs to be the area for walkers. The canopy is wonderful when walking dogs or children in the summer. Also, dogs must be allowed on the entire esplanade. I think that's probably more of a comment than a question. But again, I think it's about, understanding, again, the current uses, the uses during the summer, even the uses during the fall and winter months, for us to properly gauge and identify how the spaces are used, understanding that will change day by day, but having a more broader understanding of how those different upper and lower levels are used. We don't have anything else in the chat. Don't know if there's sort of any other straight questions. Otherwise, I will hand it back to Jeff. But just to say thank you, everybody, for listening to us talk all night, but also for your questions, and the feedback you've given us. And as we said, we're going to be posting the recording of this meeting on our website. We're going to post the chat once I download that, and we're going to post the presentation. So it'll all be available for people who couldn't make the meeting or people who joined late, who had connection issues. And thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Claudia and team. I want to encourage people to also keep track of the community board meeting calendar. These projects are regularly presented with updates at community board meetings, in particular the Environmental Protection Committee. And you can find that calendar and get on the mailing list by just Googling Manhattan Community Board 1, and the information will be there. Several of us on the phone here are very active on the community board, including our illustrious chair, Tammy Meltzer, who is a source of many of the questions here. Also, as more information becomes available, the GPTA, the Tenants Association, will be mindful to post updates on our website. But thank you all for coming. This is an important project that will have a big impact on all of us, a very negative impact during construction and hopefully a positive impact thereafter. And it's important that all of us be heard and that our comments be given to the design team so that they can take them into account. Rosalie, I don't know if you want to say any closing words.
No, I think you covered it, Jeff, but thank you, team. This has been great. And by the way, these are great questions. These are all things that the GPTA board has felt that this was important to address. All these great questions were in our minds, and we're so happy that everyone who attended had an opportunity to ask them and to get answers. And again, we'll keep you updated, and whatever we could do, team, whatever the Tenants Association could do, you just let us know.
Again, thank you so much for your time. And again, for your questions. Like, these are, again, we want all the feedback, positive, negative, otherwise. It helps us a lot in the way that we think about how the project moves forward and how we develop it. So thank you all very much. And I hope you have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Jeff. Thanks, Rosalie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.